Record. Woohoo. All right, amazing. So we're starting now with the introduction, which is the first section. It's on page 25 in my book. Hopefully it is on page 25 in yours as well. All right, and this is the introduction of Rabbi Mordechai Eliyahu to the topic in general. So we'll read through that, and then I'll pass the baton to Rebecca. In this volume of the English Tzurba Mirabanan series, the way that we've been doing it is straight up, taking turns reading, going through the text. Before we start, though, I wanted to go around, get a quick name, maybe city, and is there anything that you do, any strategy that you use so that you don't get mixed up or forget something or run late? What strategy do you use? So I'm Rivka. I'm currently in Jerusalem and from Toronto, but thank God living in Jerusalem now. And the thing that I do is set a million alarms on my cell phone because I've had too many, and even that doesn't always help, but I've had many near misses. So that's my strategy. The person I see next, if I'm going clockwise for me, is Chai. Did I freeze again?
We lost you again.
Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry. So I was saying that where did you lose me?
That you set a million alarms.
I set a million alarms. I've had many near misses, and that strategy at least sometimes works. Chai, you're next on my screen.
Hi, I'm Chai. I live in Silver Spring, originally from Canada, Montreal. I set a zillion alarms, and I want to challenge you. Who has more alarms, me or you? That's how I run my life with alarms. Yeah.
Yes. Rebecca, you're next on my screen.
Okay. I'm Rebecca. I'm from Toronto and I lived in New York for the last 10 years. I moved back with my husband and kids, and yeah, so now we live here. And I probably have the most alarms. So I guess
Sounds
this
like
is
this is
a
an effective
few.
strategy that we're all trying so hard to use effectively. Rachel, you're next on my screen, but it looks like you're still connecting to audio. So we're going to skip you for a second and go to Ayala.
Hey everyone, Ayala from Toronto. I'm currently in Toronto. It's not very original. We all use the same thing. I don't know. I use my calendar app. I almost forgot about this morning. I was on the treadmill and I got a little pop up. I'm like, perfect. Okay, I know what I'm doing next. So
Yes.
I don't do a million. I try to just do one.
Fair. Next, I have Tahila.
Hi, Tahila from Toronto, in Toronto. Um, and I don't always get to do this because it depends what it is, but I think it's really effective when I'll either get my husband to also set an alarm, or we have a shared calendar and then I'll put my events in his calendar and then he'll text me and be like, why do we have a doctor's appointment today? And I'll be like, oh yeah, I have that too. I need to take care of that.
Amazing. Thank you. Rachel, you seem like you're connected. Can we get a quick intro?
I am connected. I'm gonna be cameras off now just because I'm nursing a baby.
Oh,
But I missed what I was supposed to say. My name and
just your name, where you're from, and a strategy you use if you're nervous about messing something up or forgetting something.
Okay. My name is Rachel Riaboy. I'm originally from Chicago, Illinois, but I live in Hamilton, Ontario. A strategy that I use if I feel like I'm going to forget something is I have a WhatsApp chat with myself, and I I'll like if I'm like I have something that I have to remember, like a list or like things that I need to do, like shopping, or like if I have like a confirmation number that I need to remember for like the future, I'll just have it in the WhatsApp chat with myself.
Love it. Thank you. Vanessa, I've got you and then Bella. I think that's it.
Excuse me. My name is Vanessa. I'm originally from London, England, but I live in Toronto. I must be one of the senior members of this group because I use my calendar that I hang up and I write it down with a pen in the little square. That's how I remember.
I have that also, in addition to the other 5 different. Bella, you are muted.
Sorry. Okay, I'm Bella. I live in Montreal. I'm in Montreal right now, but I'm actually driving through Toronto tomorrow. So, what I use to remember things is reminders on my phone, paper calendar, and I like to make a lot of lists on paper.
Yes, all of the above. All right. Thank you all for introducing yourselves and for getting us in the mood, because what we're going to start with in the introduction is this idea of how important the halachot are and what we have been doing over the centuries to make sure that we don't mess it up, mix it up, forget it, etc. So that's just to get you in the mood. And here we go. In this volume of the English Tzurba Mirabanan series, we'll be focusing on the laws of Niddah and Taharat HaMishpacha, family purity. Many of the particular halachot involved affect women more directly than men. Nevertheless, it's important for both spouses to be familiar with these important halachot and learn how to apply them in a practical manner. The contemporary Sefer Darkei Tahara, written by Rav Mordechai Eliyahu on the laws of Niddah, expresses this idea in the following excerpt taken from the introduction. Okay, so that's a little introduction to the actual source. The halachot of Niddah are among the most challenging of the halachot, for although they are common and regularly applicable, the halachot are not widely known in great detail. There are a number of reasons for this. Sometimes a woman may be relying on her husband's knowledge and guidance, and he assumes great authority in the matter without ever having studied the halachot properly, relying merely on things that he learned or heard irregularly. Sometimes a man may be trusting that his wife has learned the halachot, but she may know them only on the basis of things she was told by her mother or a friend, and in a moment of weakness, she might be emboldened to overstep her authority and rule on the gravest of delicate halachic matters. The mitzvah to learn the halachot of Niddah is at least once a month, so that a person will not stumble in current prohibitions, and he will know what is forbidden, what is permitted, and what things must be asked of an authority. If someone studies in this manner, the merit of the learning will protect him, so that he will not stumble in these halachot. The matter is especially important for newlyweds, and they will study these halachot together and review them by themselves. They should also ask many questions until they know and understand these halachot well. The prohibition of Niddah is one of the prohibitions of arayot, the forbidden sexual relationships, which are subject to the principle, better to give one's life than to violate, yehareg ve'al ya'avor. This is a particularly severe prohibition. A person must start to think about becoming holier and learn the halachot of Niddah in order to become holier and avoid defilement, and in so doing, Hashem will help him from above to become holier so that he will not come into the clutches of sin. In the opening share of this volume, we will introduce some of the basic principles of this somewhat complex and sensitive area of halacha. These include a basic understanding of the biblical and rabbinic definitions of Niddah and Zavah, how they impact upon the practical halacha, and some of the necessary conditions for a woman to be rendered a Niddah. In the subsequent shiurim, we will outline the basic halachic cycle of menstruation and purification, and examine other important aspects of the halacha, including the rabbinic rules of ktamim, bedikot, and conditions for immersing in the mikveh. All right, Rebecca, I'm handing it over to you.
Okay. So this is the Niddah. This is the title. The Niddah and Ziva days according to Torah law and Chazal. As opposed to some other areas of halacha, can everyone hear me? As opposed to some other areas of halacha, the laws of Taharat HaMishpacha, as they are presented by the Torah, differ significantly from how they have been adopted on practical level. We will begin by outlining the rules as they are given by the Torah, and then explain how the rules observed today developed from there. According to Torah, blood that issues from the uterus of a woman renders her ritually impure, tameh. However, the terms of the impurity depend upon the circumstances of her discharge. In the case of Niddah, regular menstruation, the Torah states in the first pasuk quoted below that she is impure for 7 days, while in the case of Ziva, unexpected discharge, the Torah states in the second pasuk below that she must also count 7 days before she becomes pure. So in Vayikra, it says, if a woman has a discharge, her flesh discharged blood, she shall remain in a state of menstrual separation for 7 days, and whoever touches her shall become unclean until evening. In the second pasuk, it says, and concerning a woman whose flow of blood flows for many days outside of the time of her menstrual separation, or she has a discharge after her menstrual separation, then all the days she has her impure discharge, she shall be impure, just like the days of her menstrual separation. And if she becomes pure of her discharge, she shall count for herself 7 days, and after this she may be pure.
Thank you. So the difference here in the psukim is that a nida is tmeah for 7 days, regardless of what's going on. Meaning, as soon as she becomes a nida, she's tmeah for 7 days, and she tovels the night after that, meaning the night of the 8th day. And then a zava is somebody who has bleeding that's not quite on the regular cycle. There's something off about it. And in that case, she has to wait until she's finished having this discharge and then count 7 blood-free days. Okay, so that's the difference in the psukim. But you're going to see, I mean, I'm sure you realize by now that that things have developed since then. So distinguishing between nida and zava. That's the next section, right up here. Did anybody who joined a little bit later have the text? Or is it just me and Rebecca? Okay. According to the Ramban and other Rishonim, the primary difference between Niddah and Ziva is that Niddah involves bleeding caused by natural biological processes, as opposed to Ziva, which refers to unusual bleeding, described by the pasuk above as outside the time of her menstrual separation. Accordingly, the process of purification for a Zava is specifically a Zava Gedola, as opposed to a Zava Katana, we're going to explain those terms in a second, is a longer and more complicated process than the purification process for a Niddah. Okay, so something that's abnormal or pathological bleeding, I don't mean pathological like something terrible is going to happen, but it's not the usual natural cycle. That's going to require the 7 blood-free days, so it's a much more involved process or a longer process. How do we determine if a woman's bleeding constitutes Niddah or Ziva? The answer is that it depends on when the bleeding occurs. According to most Rishonim, if she bleeds within the 11 days that follow an episode of Niddah, this is considered untimely or unusual bleeding, and she's deemed to be a Zava. However, if the bleeding begins more than 11 days after her last menstrual cycle, her bleeding is viewed as the beginning of a new episode of regular Niddah. According to the Gemara in Niddah, the significance of the number 11 derives from a halacha l'Moshe miSinai, a halachic tradition that Moshe received from Hashem at Sinai and was not recorded explicitly in the Torah. And here's the source. Here's the quote from Masechet Niddah, 72b. The halacha that 1/2 of a log is the requisite amount of oil for a toda, a korban toda, and the halacha that 1/4 of a log is the amount of wine for the korban that a nazir brings, and the halacha that a woman who experiences an emission of blood during the 11 days that are between one period of menstruation and the next is that she's at Zava. Each of these is a halacha transmitted to Moshe from Sinai. So there are 3 examples of a halacha l'Moshe Sinai, and this is one of them, that there are 11 days between the first Niddah period and then any subsequent one. It has to be at least 11 days later to be another Niddah. If not, it's potentially a Zava. All right. According to the biblical model, 2 substantial halachic differences distinguish the Zava from the Niddah with regard to the process of becoming Tahora. 1, the Zava must count 7 clean days, known as Shiva Nekiyim. Number 2, she must bring a korban, an offering, on the day following the 7 days. So again, on the 8th day. Let's explain. Midoraita, the Torah, according to the Torah, the ritual impurity engendered by a state of Niddah applies for a minimum of 7 days from the onset of the bleeding. Even if a woman continues to bleed during this time, so long as the bleeding has ceased by the end of the 7th day, she may immerse and become purified the following night, meaning the night which begins the 8th day. If the bleeding continues past 7 days, she may immerse the first night after the bleeding has ceased. She's already passed her minimum, so she'll just tovel whenever she can. Additionally, it should be noted that her purification does not require an offering. It does not require a korban. When it comes to a Zava, there are 2 categories. If she experiences untimely uterine bleeding over the course of 1 or 2 consecutive days, she's considered a minor Zava, a Zava Ketana. In this case, if she observes 1 full day without bleeding, she may subsequently immerse and become Tahora. Because the impurity may be halted by immersion after a single day without bleeding, a woman in this category is sometimes called Shomeret Yom Keneged Yom. She keeps one day. I don't know how to translate Keneged, but meaning in place of or to parallel one day. So she had 1 or 2 days of bleeding. She waits 1 clean day and she immerses. If, however, the untimely discharge of blood continues for at least 3 consecutive days, then she has the status of a major Zava, a Zava Gedola, in order to return to a state of purity. So that's the one who has to now count Sheva Nekiyim and then Tovel on the night after the 7 days, and then bring a korban that next day. Even after immersing, she's required to complete a process consisting of the offering of 2 turtle doves or young pigeons, one as a burnt offering, an ola, and one as a sin offering, a chatat. After she presents these offerings on the 8th day or thereafter, she's permitted to enter the temple and or partake of consecrated foods, kodshim. In the case of both Niddah and Zavah, this is our summary, they're considered avot hatuma, primary sources of impurity, such that a woman in either state will convey impurity of mishkav and moshav, bedding and seating, and she will also convey impurity by touch and by intimate relations. Nowadays, of course, we're no longer particular about the halachot of purity and impurity, though we will see in subsequent shiurim that certain aspects of these halachot may still impact on the laws of ketamim. So two things of note is Bezrat Hashem, tomorrow, when the Beit HaMikdash is rebuilt, we will all be very concerned with Tuma and Tahara. Right now, we are not so much, but you'll see in the next comment that because the Tuma and Tahara is linked to being permitted and forbidden, we still care about that part, even nowadays. And the second is that you'll see as the halacha developed, we sort of incorporated other parts, other components from regular Tuma and Tahara, not just Niddah, not just Yoledet, not just Zava. We've sort of put a lot of things together to create a system that is straightforward, easy to learn, easy to apply. Okay, so the second piece was that intimate relations are prohibited until the woman returns to a state of purity. So that's why we still care, even though we don't necessarily take care about ritual purity and ritual impurity, we still very much care about this particular one. Thus far, we've outlined the basic Torah level concepts of the categories of Niddah and Zavah, as well as the differences between them. However, it may be difficult or confusing at times to precisely determine in which category a particular woman who is bleeding is classified. And here's where it gets a little bit murky. Chazal instituted a number of ordinances in order to prevent the errant abuse of severe prohibitions and to streamline the purification process from either impurity, from either Niddah or Zavah is what they mean. All right, Rebecca, we are ready for the Takana of Rabbi Zira. Excuse me, of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, sorry. Rabbi Zira is coming, but this is the Takana of Rabbi Basadot is what it's referred to.
Okay. The ordinance of Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi. In order to prevent a woman from mistaking an incidence of Zava Gedola for the more routine Niddah, such as where she became confused as to which part of her cycle she was in, which would result in her falsely regaining purity without the requisite Sheva Nekiyim required for Zava Gedola, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi ordained that a woman must uniformly observe that the Sheva Nekiyim every time she experiences 3 consecutive days of bleeding. This enactment is reported by the Amoraim and Gemara in Niddah. In Masechet Niddah, it says, Rav Yosef says that Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi decreed that in the fields, if she saw blood on one day, she must sit and count 6 days. And that first day, if she experiences bleeding for 2 days, she must sit and count 6 days. And both of those first 2 days for a total of 8 days. If she experiences bleeding for 3 days, she must sit and count 7 days. Rashi explains the significance of the fields mentioned as well as the logic behind each of the 3 cases of bleeding mentioned in the Gemara.
Okay, so in the fields, right? So this is Takanat Rabbi Basadot, the ordinance of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi in the fields. Rashi explains, this refers to places without people proficient in the observance of halacha, who do not know how to properly calculate the cycles for distinguishing the Niddah days from the Ziva days. So, and the Rebbe said that if she sees one day, she should keep that day plus another 6. Okay. And Rashi explains, in accordance with the Torah law that requires 7 days for a niddah, as perhaps she's in her days of an expected menstruation, meaning if she were a niddah, she would need 7 days. So meaning that day that she saw bleeding plus another 6. If she was a Zavah, right, and we're not sure which one she is because she's lost track, but if she were a Zavah, she had only seen 1 day. So the most she could need is 1 more day. So the most extreme position is this one of waiting a full 7. It's possible she might be finished after 1, but we're going to wait a full 7. That way, there's no chance that she could tovel early and really not have been a niddah without realizing it. 2. So then the second scenario is that she sees 2 days and she has to wait another 6. So how does that work? As a stringency. The reason is that perhaps the first day was the end of bleeding from Ziva day. So let's say she had 1 day of Ziva bleeding. Great. So she would only have to wait 1 day. But then the second day of bleeding actually was her first of her niddah period. So she went straight in from Zava to niddah, or from Ziva to niddah, such that she would require an additional 6 days from that second day of bleeding, because that was really her first day of niddah. However, if there were 3 days of bleeding, then since it's possible that these are actually Ziva days, then she would require Sheva Nekiyim. So as soon as she sees 3 days in a row, then already we assume Zava Gedola, and we need Sheva Nekiyim, not just 7 days. Yes? Okay. According to Rashi, Rabbi Yehuda Nassi's enactment was designed to ensure that those places in which niddah and ziva days may be confused will still cover all the scenarios. Thus, if she bled for 1 day, we must be concerned that she's a niddah, and she therefore waits 7 days. If it was a ziva bled, she would only be a zava katana for 1 or 2 days of bleeding. If she bleeds for 2, we must be concerned that the first day was ziva bled and the second was niddah, for which she must wait 7 more days. If both were ziva, again, she would not need to wait 7 days. Right, because she was still a Zava Katana for that. If she bleeds for 3 days, we must be concerned that perhaps it is Ziva blood, in which case she's a Zava Gedola and waits Sheva Nekim. All right. Here comes the Chumrah of Rabbi Zera. Rebecca.
Okay, wait, okay. The stringency of Rabbi Zera. The Gemara in the continuation of the Sugya reports that some generations later, in the period of Amoraim, Rabbi Zera codified an additional stringency that one must count Sheva Nekiyim, like a Zava Gedola, even upon seeing a small amount of blood on 1 day alone. So in Masechet Niddah, it says, Rabbi Zera said, Jewish women were stringent with themselves to the extent that even if they see a drop of blood the size of a mustard seed, they set 7 clean days for it. Although the stringent practice of counting Sheva Nekiyim for even small amounts of blood does not appear to have been initiated by Chazal, it was accepted and confirmed by them. As the Rambam in Hilchot Niddah writes, this stringency, which has been practiced by Jewish women, has been accepted by the sages. They have treated it as every other codified halacha, and accordingly, one may never be frivolous respecting this practice. In a similar vein, the Gemara even cites Rabbi Zera's stringency as a proper example of a standardized halacha. This stringency referred to by Rabbi Zera is further explained by Rav Yaakov ben Asher in his monumental halachic code, the Tur. In the Tur, it says, as a result of the numerous exiles, of the challenges, of the oppressions, and the dulling of the spirits, they were concerned that people would come to err concerning sin, subject to the punishment of karet. A woman might experience bleeding during the first 6 days when her routine time of niddah is expected, and all of the blood is pure, i.e., it does not render her impure for an additional period of time, more than those 7 days, and presume that she is allowed to immerse at nightfall after the 7th day. But perhaps she will see impure blood on the 7th day, ziva blood. Without realizing that, she is required to count another 7 days. Therefore, they were stringent to render every appearance, mara, of red blood impure, as ziva. And in order to prevent people from accidentally confusing the days of niddah and days of ziva, they added an additional stringency to the original stringency. The result was that even if she sees only a mustard seed's volume of blood, she must wait for Sheva Nekiyim, as though she is a major Zava.
So again, even that takana of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi was not enough, because let's say a woman sees some blood and she thinks, oh, well, last month I waited 6 days, or well, last month I waited whatever. And she doesn't have enough information, and she doesn't have enough halachic guidance, right? There's nobody there to tell her, actually, the first 6 days were really tahor blood, and you've only started to become a Niddah now on the 7th day or on the 5th day or whenever it was. And so your timing, your calculations are off. So we have adopted Jewish women. We're like, we're not going to do that. We're going to set lots of alarms. We're going to write it down in our calendars. We're going to make sure that there's absolutely no way that we could possibly be transgressing an Isser Karet. And so no matter what we see, we are only going to be waiting. We are always going to be waiting, not only, we're always going to be waiting 7 clean days, not just 7 days, but 7 clean days. Okay. It's a good thing. We have 10 minutes. We're going to get it done. We only have 2 sources left. Are you ready? Buckle up. According to the Tur, the purpose of the additional stringency of Rabbi Zera was also to ensure that no confusion arises from Niddah and Ziva. This halachic ruling is recorded in the Shulchan Aruch as well. In Yoreh De'ah 183:1, if a woman discharges blood from her uterus, she is ritually impure, and even if she sees no more than the volume of a mustard seed, she must wait for Sheva Nekiyim. Rav Mordechai Eliyahu summarizes the rabbinic regulations in practice today. Becky, take us home.
Okay. According to Torah law, there are 2 categories of impurity relating to discharged blood, 1 Niddah and 2 Zavah. There are a number of differences between these 2 types of impurity, including which offerings must be brought in the temple era, that a Zavah Gedolah must count Sheva Nekiyim and others. However, Jewish women have adopted the stringency to observe Sheva Nekiyim for the discharge of every mustard seed's volume of blood, just as she had contracted the status of Zavah Gedolah. There are many reasons for this stringency, among which the most significant is in order to generate a universal count and procedure for becoming purified, which alleviates the need for complicated, personalized calculations regarding which many people would err. Although this law is fundamentally a stringency, it has been fixed as an unassailable halacha, and when the Gemara seeks to illustrate the concept of standardized halacha pesuka, for the purpose of explaining the principle that a person is enjoined to enter into prayer after studying halacha pesuka, the Gemara cites this stringency. Before concluding this section, we should note that the reason for the additional layers of stringency within Hilchot Niddah is due to the severity and sensitivity of the prohibition, as mentioned above. Relations between a husband and wife during the Niddah period is subject to karet. Plus, one's desire in this area can sometimes lead one to engage in forbidden activities. Therefore, the sages and subsequent authorities tried their utmost to prevent couples from reaching the stage that they might unintentionally transgress this prohibition.
Thank you. So again, these are all stringencies that we have adopted over the years so that we can have this universal calculation, so that we're not running to our calendars every time we see blood, but we actually know how to proceed. We know that we would never, ever come to actually, trafe up our chicken soup because the milchik spoons and the fleishik forks and everything's so far away from each other, right? And the number of days that we wait each time is so complete and so standardized that there's no chance of us making a mistake in something that's intensely important and intensely sensitive, time sensitive, emotionally sensitive, et cetera, et cetera. So that's how we got to the unified practice that we have today. Next week, Bezrat Hashem, we will start talking about the requirement of Hargasha, which you've probably heard a lot about already. Any questions, comments, concerns about this week? Are we all Canadian? Yes, I think we are. Well, Rachel, are you currently Canadian?
Yeah, I'm a dual citizen.
All right. This is very
Well,
Canadian.
I don't live in Canada, but I'm from Canada, so I'm still considering myself Canadian. So this is incredible. I mean, I sort of knew about this, but this amount of detail was really incredible. And all I can say is thank God we don't have to do this. Sounds so complicated. No, it's really the basic point is really a protection for us. That's
yeah,
right.
It's true. Like when we come to it and somebody else has already taken that position. It's easy for us to think, no, I could have managed it, and I could figure it out. Now we have computers, we've got mikveh calendar apps, but the reality is for women over most of Jewish history, it was incredibly complicated. And the other thing is that I heard somebody say that I have repeated since is that, on Tisha B'Av, when you're crying for the Beis HaMikdash, like think of how much less complicated things could be if we actually had, a Sanhedrin and appropriate halachic guidance in these areas. We could make life potentially simpler or more complicated, depending how you see it. So something to think about. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you.
I look forward to seeing you next week.
I'll
Please,
be at
God,
conference,
yeah.
but I'll
Thanks,
be-
Rivka.
Thank you.
Thank you so
you.
much.
Thank you, both of you. Thank you.